Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the media's globalist controlled propaganda media's depiction and representation of the anti-mass migration marches. I mean, it was one, I think, yesterday in London that had many hundreds of thousands of people attending, and various speakers such as Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins. Elon Musk came in by satellite, so it's quite a big affair. And there have also been a number of marches equally, well attended about mass migration in Australia and other places around the world. So it's a real issue. And what's interesting here is how the globalist controlled propaganda media try to depict it. Now, it doesn't matter whether you go to the Hindustani Times, because the Indians are very much invested in mass migration. Everybody wants to get the fuck out of India and go to a rich white country. So there's the way they depict it, though, is that it's white people are against any and all migration. It is because of white supremacy and the Nazis and fascists and Hitler and swastika. So but it's roundly depicted no matter where you go across the mainstream globalist controlled media, whether it's the BBC in England or the German government media, French government media, Canadian government, and so on. It's a universal, centrally scripted message. All these people that are against mass migration, they're fascists, they're Nazis, they're Hitler, they're swastika, they're white supremacist, KKK, and every sort of name they can throw at them. That's what they are. And it's always depicted as they're against migration. Those are just against migrants. They're just against migrants. No. They're against mass migration. Now, just the numbers are in, I think, from last year. The numbers are finally tallied up. It takes a long time for reasons that I fail to understand. But there's just shy of 600,000 people were brought into Australia last year. Most of those Indians, 600,000. Now, there's some claim that, well, the biggest number of migrants coming in is in fact from Britain. So, what's your problem, you fascist Nazis? Well, no, most of the people coming in, not most, many coming in from Britain are Indians and black people and Asian people who were doing the loop. People go, say, from Hong Kong to Britain, Chinese people, and then from Britain to Australia. Or black people going from Africa to Britain, they get some sort of residency, then come to Australia, and so on. So this is part of the international sort of, people trafficking network. They're saying these people are suddenly up and deciding to come. Now, when if you've got like British, like you're a black person, but you've been in England for a year or two, the bar is just seriously lowered for you. So you could be a 20-word a minute typist, like a two-fingered 20-word a minute typist, but they'll then bring you in under a skilled migration program because supposedly we're short of typists in Australia. So the black chick gets the skilled migration visa. But anyway, so the brown and black people are by far and away the greatest number of folks that are pouring into Australia and the West generally. And when you look at where the surplus populations of the world are, Africa and the Indian subcontinent and parts of the Middle East, when you look at where those surplus populations are, then that's the primary source of migrants. Now, of course, these are low IQ, zero skilled, parasite people who bring no value or anything, and they're coming in vast numbers. So the complaint that everybody has isn't about migration, not at all. No, I don't know anyone. I do not know a single person. In fact, I can't even imagine that I've met a single person that is against migration. But skilled migration, people who have real skills, they bring something to the table, they have capabilities, and they come into, Australia in this case, in areas where their skills are needed, where there is a genuine short supply of skills. Not where there's a short supply of employers willing to pay a decent wage. That's not the same as skilled shortage. That's just employers not wanting to pay the wages they need to attract the workers. And so they go to the government and say, hey, bring in lots of illiterate peasants and that'll solve the problem, which it doesn't, of course. Nonetheless, let's just look at this sort of, no, I don't know anyone who's against migration. This claim that there's all these white supremacist, Nazi, fascist Hitlers that are against migration of brown and black people. I don't know any. I mean, if there are any, I've never met them or come across them or heard about them. So that doesn't make sense at all. So I believe that can be dismissed as an outrageous and grotesque untruth, which it is. But if there is going to be migration, the people quite reasonably want migrants to have something to contribute. Now there is people, poor peasants from India or somewhere, where we just want to have a better life. Oh, well, sure you do. So do I. And better life for me may be a waterfront mansion on acreage with tennis courts and infinity pools and on the harbour with a boat jetty and that may be. Everybody wants a better life, but buddy, you're in a poor country. You've been born in a poor country with a corrupt basket case bullshit government. Stay in your own country and fix that. Don't come to parasite off what we, the white Westerners, with our superior technology and organizational skills, engineering skills and so on, that we've built this society. It's not here for you to parasite off. If you've got skills and you've got capabilities, you want to integrate into the society here, hey, welcome, come on in. But the numbers that fit this criteria are very small. Now, if you look at the 1960s immigration to Australia, say, or maybe the later 50s and into the 60s and early 1970s, you look at the manifest of say a migrant ship. I'll use this is legal, not illegal. This is legal, and you look at the manifest. I've mentioned this before. Now there were labourers and so on, but the manifest was, you look at carpenter, accountant, nurse, specialist midwife, like delivering babies, architect, concreter, electrician, plumber, and so on and so on and so on. There was, pretty much, whether it be a trade or not, pretty much everyone had a skill, or they had a track record of employment in a first world country with first world technology. For example, I knew one guy, I can't remember, I think it was somewhere in northern England, and he was like a stoker, a boiler stoker in an ironworks. So he was the dude with the, I don't think it would have been a shovel, probably would have been some sort of a machine or excavator or something. He was the guy who shoveled the coal into the boiler and so on. This type of stuff. And the guy had done it for years now. Whether you'd call that a top of the range skill or not, that can debate. But he's employed in jobs in a first world country with using and working with first world technology. That to my mind is a skill of sorts. So these are the people that are, or even I remember, guys that I knew who were factory workers, and the guy had been a supervisor in a factory making cars. And he was in charge of the section that put on, I don't know, the wheel hubs or something like that on a car. Again, you can, he's got a skill there that can be used in a first world country, in a first world manufacturing sort of situation. So that, again, I would say that would be a valued migrant who can find employment quite easily and offer his services to a number of different employers. So this was the sort of people who were being brought in. With some labourers coming in, there were offsets. There was an Irish guy who was a basic labourer, but he had like 7 kids under the age of 16, and so he got brought in as a migrant, just because he had so many young children, who grew up to be Australians and that sort of thing. So there were sort of various sort of arrangements there. But the point I'm making is there was an emphasis on skilled people coming in and who had some skills, who could do things. Now, not all of them were like that. In the immediate post-war years, there were people coming in who were spoke very little English, and they were brought in under refugee type circumstances following World War II. The majority of them, in fact, nearly all of them, were still Christian. Majority were still white, and they would fit in their children would fit in quite easily. Unlike, say, Indians and Africans, those will be even 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations on, they still send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and wives. Whereas people who came from, I don't know, Finland or Germany or Holland or something like that, they would integrate within one generation. England, Ireland, Scotland, they would integrate within one generation. So the idea of, and you also notice this, by the way, in, say, a migrant from, say, I don't know, Holland, Belgium, France, Germany, those sort of places, the chances of the children that were born in Australia from parents from those places, the chances of them speaking any German or French or something like that is very slim. They may have a few words, but they basically will only speak English with a very small knowledge of French or German or something like that. Whereas, the Greeks who come in their third generation born in Australia, they still speak Greek and still see themselves not so much as Greek, Greek Australian, so they straddle the middle ground there, but they don't see themselves as Australian. And then you see the difference between, say, people from northern Italy who come from like near where the Swiss border is and that sort of stuff. They integrate fairly quickly, whereas people, the more peasant agricultural people from southern Italy, they still are quite Italian by the second generation. So the more the sort of, if you like, the more advanced the society is in terms of industry and organization and so on, the more likely the people will integrate very quickly. The more peasant-like and third world society, the less likely to integrate it quickly or at all. I mean, again, Indians who are 6, 7 generations on, they still haven't integrated. Sure, they're willing to take everything, parasite off the white society with great glee and gusto, but they don't want to integrate. They still see themselves as spiritually, morally, and genetically superior and separate. So coming back to the point about mass migration, now there's been various studies done in Australia and elsewhere, Britain and so on, where they look at how many of the migrants, the mass migrants, are actually useful to the society. Can get jobs, can speak English, do have qualifications, do have skills, do have relevant work experience, and even at the top end, they're talking about 5%. So every 100,000 that are brought in, 5%. At best, and that's generous, 5% are actually worthwhile as migrants. Now, so this means out of the 600,000 last year that Australia brought in, about 30,000, and that's a generous. I think it'll be closer to 20. About 30,000 maximum are useful to the society. Now, to Australia. Now, I've got no problem with those 30,000 coming in. I have no problem at all. None whatsoever. They should be and must be, I believe, welcomed as migrants to Australia or to any first world country. But that's it. Now, if there was an emphasis on, say, people that have maybe a couple of young children, then your 30,000, like say families, young children, then you could be talking about overall, including the children, 50 or 60,000 people coming in. And that's fine. The younger children will grow up to be Australian and that sort of thing. So the more advanced societies they come from, places like, I'm talking technical first world, places like Britain and Germany and Sweden or something, then the more likely they're going to integrate very quickly, and the children that are young when they come to us, say under the age of 10. And children who are, of course, born in Australia, they'll be Australians pretty much straight away. They will be valuable members. I mean, other things being equal, they'll be valuable members of society in terms of, well, firstly, they integrate and the parents have good English and relevant, professional skills, things like that. So that would be a great asset to Australia, those sort of numbers and those sort of people. But instead, out of the 600,000, 570,000 are either of minimal or marginal or no benefit to Australia at all. So this is what people are demonstrating against: the mass migration of illiterate third world parasite peasants being brought en masse, under globalist instructions and direction. I get that. And the globalists are viciously defending their ideology on this and calling anyone who disagrees Nazi and Hitler and fascist and whatever. But I want to make it as clear as I possibly can. The issue is with mass migration, not migration. Same, the million people coming into Britain each year, or more than a million, 50,000 or so would be useful to the British economy and society. Most of those people will be the absolute elites in various other third world countries, if that's where they're from, who'll be reasonably well integrated into at least the economy. But that's the extent of it. The numbers of people that are really skilled and capable of integrating, have the language, the numbers are very small. And that's just a reality of value migration. When it comes to mass migration, then for every one person that comes in that's useful to the economy, there's 20 that are brought in that are just parasites. And that's what the complaint and the concern is over this mass migration. Now, the globalists will never admit to this, but that's the reality of what's going on. They want to stuff the Western white countries full of low IQ peasant parasites, and through that create a consuming mass where you have to, the only place you can go to buy any goods and services is from the things that are monopoly controlled by the globalists. That's their trajectory of how the economy is going to be and how people will relate to the economy. But that I believe needs to be stopped and pushed back against, which we can see happening with these protests going on. But don't let the globalists control the narrative here. Anyone that's in a talk show or any sort of news thing, supposedly debating it, the second they accuse you of being far right, fascist, this sort of thing, you must push back instantly. You are a vile, disgusting liar, and just keep at them until they shut up. This idea that they get a free pass to call us who oppose mass migration fascist, Nazis and Hitlers and they get a free pass to do that. If you push back against it in some countries now, it's almost illegal. You'll be sent to prison if you push back against it. But to push back, you are a vile, disgusting liar, and practice it and have it ready to throw out, because this is what needs to be done. So on the issue of mass migration, the mass migration is a disaster for the West, and for the Western populace. Whereas skilled migration, no one has a problem with it. I don't know anyone who is opposed to it. And this is skilled migration is what we need to focus on, and it needs to happen quickly. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.